Anybody need a extra 1 minute to go get the fourth cup of coffee? Feel free to. So my brain is still on the Boston time. So I went to sleep at 1 o'clock, woke up at 4 o'clock. Not good. How many of you are here from US? What? Or the next question was, how many of you from East Coast in the Boston area? The first time in our history, I can actually not see beyond my height because we have 8 foot of snow outside my house. It's terrible. And we had 6 more inches yesterday, about 15 centimeters. Yeah. That sounds like a piece of cake. And they had 1 inch of snowfall in North Carolina and the whole state shut down. So, I don't know. 8 feet, yes. We have not had so much snow in over 100 years. So whoever says global warming is a fact, he is not kidding. Or he does not know what he's talking about. And the coldest day or days we have had was minus 25. Yes, and I had ice cream that day, so. Let me see what I can see. Okay. So this is just a little brief about me. And let's see if this laser works. Yeah. So that's my son. He's 17. He thinks he's 27. That's my daughter. She is 23. She thinks she's 30. And she's a med student and in New England area. And that's me and my wife. I go on radio occasionally. Guess what? What do I do on radio? Anybody? Traffic. Sorry? Traffic, yeah, pretty much. Weather, SQL knowledge. No, actually, I'm a singer and a comedian too, so in case you didn't figure that out, but I'm also an avid photographer. Some of my photography is on display in Harvard and so on. So I'm a very non-DBA kind of geek, so excuse me. And we'll try to make this very interactive. So just to make it a little more lucrative for you, we have some stuff from my company over here. So if anybody asks me a question, then I can actually pass this along to you. So what is a database forensics? Let's start with that. So anybody? Come on, guys, I said interactive.
Science behind databases.
Sorry?
Science.
Yeah, and a little bit of art too, right? So yeah, he says science, right? Okay, so yeah.
Could you repeat the questions because of the recording?
Correct, I just said I did, okay. And in my spare time, actually, I'm preparing for my retirement, and I coach children for public speaking. And one of the things they get negative marks on is if they do not repeat the questions. So feel free to test me any number of times, okay? And I have been a DBA for about 17 years. And about 3 months ago, I actually quit being a DBA, and I moved on to become a SQL Solutions architect for my company. So I take my company's product and help implement them at my customer's place and design a better product too. So having said that, let's move on. Anybody have questions on this so far? Okay, great. The SQL Rally people recommended a blue color. On the slides, I could never actually get it. So aren't you proud of me being a DBA? So we'll just go through the following bullet points. That is introduction. What are the goals of database forensics? What could the goals be? Okay. What was the keyword I used? Interactive, right? Okay, so what do you think the goals of a database forensics exercise is?
Figuring out who
Okay, so the gentleman, I cannot say what color that is. So he said it's figuring out what the heck happened. Yes, that's pretty much what it is. But how it happened too, right? And where, from which place it originated, how long it lasted. How many of you have actually experienced a breach? One? Okay. Just one person? Wow. Uh, Anybody aware of the brand name called Target stores in US? They were breached about 2 years ago. You know how long that breach went on? Seriously, this is absolutely mind-blowing. The data was being milked out of the company for almost 3 weeks before they realized that, oh my God, somebody's stealing our data. Wasn't there a Danish company, health company, whose data was breached for 6 months? So this is hopefully something that we can do here. Will help you to actually get to the bottom of it. So one of the things we will also talk about is what type of breaches we can have, for example, internal, external, and so on. Why do we need to know the file formats? Of course, SQL. Anybody here? Okay, I'll tell you. We'll talk about that too. And what methodology to use to undermine or to actually check out a complete forensics exercise. What is incident preparedness? So how do you prepare for a forensics? Just quick one answer. And I think I can give you a box of mint. Anybody? How would you start? Yeah? Security? No. No, sorry, this doesn't belong to you. Yes, sir.
You should have a checklist.
Checklist, right? Okay. So anybody here played a management game called Getting Stuck in the Arctic Tundra? And your plane crashes in the Arctic Tundra and you have only 15 minutes to salvage whatever you want. But thanks for being the brave person to give not the best answer, but that's still okay. Yes, sir. Auditing, right? Okay. So let's go through that. This is a priceless screen cleaner, and it works. So, incident verification, because you don't want to cry wolf, you really want to know if indeed the breach happened, right? That is very crucial for us. What are artifacts? This is actually by far the most important thing you can do is to collect your artifacts, how to verify these artifacts. Okay, this is a very important question. What artifacts would you collect in terms of importance? What is the first thing you would like to collect? It's okay to give me a generic answer too. Sorry? Logins? Okay, sorry. Somebody said something else. Oh, they went quiet. Oh my God. Okay, so actually logins are something that are very static. So that's one of the last thing you really want to worry about, including your SQL Server logs, event viewer logs. That's the last thing you really want to worry on this planet, okay? Because they're going to be there. They're not going away anywhere, okay? So we'll see what to do first, like plan cache, procedure cache. These are the things that are there, and they go away pretty quick, right? Anybody heard of log reader products? So log readers are great for you, actually, not kidding at all. But the problems, what are associated problems of using log readers, we'll also check that. I had actually a brand name here, but I removed it because I didn't want to sound very commercial. So, and we'll then actually have a demo as to see what we can do and find out how to handle a plan handle and then go into the text of the query that was last run and so on. And all great presentations end with a Q&A, right? So we'll have some Q&A if time permits. And can somebody keep me honest on the time? We have a lot to cover, so. And then some bibliography to go with. So introductions. What sort of breaches do we have? Okay, that we'll cover that now. And what is e-discovery? Anybody know what e-discovery is? It's a huge branch of database forensics that are evolving in states, at least for the past 5 years that I know. So there are products that are available. So, for example, you have a dump of your computer or a whole bunch of email systems. You can actually import that whole thing into a database and then go through it for search words and so on. So that is called e-discovery. What is that? I forgot a girl's name. Lizzie McGuire movie. Anybody see that? That's based on e-discovery. So okay. We'll actually see what we can do with the breaches now. So let's go forward. Now goals. What are the goals? Okay. So to prove or disprove the occurrence actually, whether some breach actually happened or not. What is the scope of the intrusion? How bad is it? For example, in case of Target, they couldn't do anything. It was gone, it was gone. The best thing they could do is, guys, we messed up, sorry, right? So this is the most important part, retracing what happened. And everything that you said earlier, like looking at the logins, the login attempts that we have had, running a trace. Why is trace difficult? SQL trace, SQL profiler, yeah?
Two things, it's not automatically running, and another thing is that you can set the level of the grain, how much it logs, and it also does quite much load from the server.
So if I summarize it, he says that you can set so much information that you will actually drown in that information, right? But more importantly, you can set the profiler only after you know what you're looking for, right? But here the breach has already happened, so profiler is no good use for us much, except when we use a honeypot, and we will talk about that too a little later, okay? If you want to find out what is the pre and post transaction, what is the easiest way to roll back? Come on, DBAs. Yeah, backup, restore, right? Cool. And recover previously deleted database data. So you can actually do that using your own scripts, or you can use any third-party tools too. The one that I worked with during my course at Boston University is called the Windows Forensics Toolkit, WFST. It's a super duper tool. It has a whole bunch of Linux built into it, and you can take the entire dump of your SQL server, not the SQL dump, the entire VM or physical machine, and then create it here and then run everything that you want to. And some of the commands also we will see as we go along. So, so let's look at the breaches. Now, can you see what sort of breach is this? This is the external breach, okay? So some unauthorized user logs into your web server, it goes to your app server, into your database server, right? Whereas this is the scope of your SQL Server investigation, where you are interested only in this. You don't really care as a DBA what happened on the app server or the web server. If somebody actually put in a plain text password in their file DSN on this machine, or their connection.inc file did have a plain text password, you don't care about that. Your main concern is this, and that's what we look into a breach. And this is an internal breach, where a person actually, disgruntled employee, for example, last year I didn't get a raise, so all I had to do was go and put in an extra 0 in my salary field, right? But that is traceable, believe it or not, because most of these HR people have a built-in audit function that tells you if any field changed for anybody overnight and where it came from, which login. Right? But being a DBA, you know which logins to use, but then you can't always change the workstation you used from. So just watch out for that. So this is what I was telling you about the file formats as to why we need to know them. For example, if it's a SQL Server .mdf file, right? This is where the name is for the file. So if somebody can actually change the name of your .mdf file to a .jpg file or a .wmv file or a real audio file or something like that, your firewall may not be trained to look for transfer of this information. And you see this string here, that is a signature of a SQL Server file. So if somebody is transferring that file across the wire, your sniffer should be able to catch this immediately. Another thing, if somebody is actually carrying this in the USB drive, for example, as JPG, then you can actually have a small PowerShell script that will go through all the files looking for this string. So how do you prohibit people from taking this, your stuff or company stuff on USB drives? Yeah?
Well, you can use group policy to prevent your end users to use USB drives.
Makes sense? So basically disable your USB ports is the answer, right?
Or stick glue into those. I have seen that as well.
Glue?
Yeah, glue into USB ports so you can't put in your memory stick.
Oh, that's a very sticky problem. I tell you that. So cool. So for you, I have this pen, which is personally autographed by me.
Thank you.
Cool, thanks. So I'll just go through this quickly so that we don't have to wait for the animation. But you first prepare for your investigation. We will then verify if that incident actually did happen. We will collect some artifacts, and then we analyze it. Which is the most important thing here? If you are paying attention and had the 4th cup of coffee, you would know this. Collection of artifacts, the most important thing. And actually, I have a list of artifacts you can collect. Go ahead and take a picture of that, and this is available for you to download anyway. So, how do you configure your forensics workstation? Anybody? So say, for example, you have been asked to find out if there is a problem in the company's database. You need to go and check something, right? So what is the first thing you would do? Prepare your workstation, right? How are you going to collect information? So things like SQL Server Management Studio, a portable USB drive, a good internet connection, and one more thing you need. You need a special toolkit that you can design yourself, and we can actually see what we can have. But various versions of SQL Server, for example, you can actually take care and put them in your workstation, not necessarily fully installed, but keep them ready with you, because in case it's a 2014 SQL Server that has been breached into, but you have a SQL 2000 tools on your computer, you can't access them. We have some incident response scripts that I have written. They are also available for you to download. And these are also available on the website of the person whose book I have referred to, and that is also available on in various folders. How to prepare your workstation, how to query your databases, the master database, the metadata, and so on. So the WFST that I was talking to you about, the Windows Forensics Toolkit, that is something, on top of it, you can actually have your SQL scripts to go with that too. Incident verification. How many verifications are there? So SQL Server penetration, what do you think is the first sign that your data was actually breached? Actually, it's very difficult for you to really know unless somebody in the business realizes that, oh my God, something is wrong here, right? For example, if you are the disgruntled employee and you now start sending out price lists of an expensive product at a lower cost, for example, if your product costs $1,000 and if you're sending it at $10, somebody in sales will know, geez, who sold this at $10 and so on. So you really need to know the extent of penetration, and that's what you want to do. How do you know if it's an active unauthorized SQL Server connection? Somebody in the back? Yeah, this is a DBA question, guys. This is not a forensics question, so. if you have somebody trying to, yes, oh,
One of the typicals is if the SA really exists.
thank you. Now, are you going to walk down here to pick up this, or?
Oh,
No, no, I'll throw it to you. How's that? Let's see.
yeah.
Oh, good catch. Cool. So you see a lot of SA connections that are failed, and then suddenly the SA connection passes. You would know somebody tried to breach into it using unauthorized. Um, if somebody uses Funky Babe and is accessing your HR database, you know that something's seriously wrong. Okay, so you want to watch out against that, and that is something that is visible where? Activity monitor, right? You can actually look into it, right? And SQL Server logs too. SQL Server error logs, right? If you look at your SQL Server error logs from the past, it will actually help you create a history for a specific person. Did he do this on a regular basis? Is it becoming a part of his character to look into databases where he is not, or sorry, he/she is not supposed to look into, right? Plan cache. Anybody know how to access plan cache? Somebody spoke about plan cache yesterday. I think Grant did, right? Anybody attended Grant's session yesterday? Wow, you guys are tough. Cool. And then session details, right? Where do you get session details? Again, activity monitor, yay. Activity monitor is like our stethoscope, right? That's the best way to find out something's wrong. So let's collect some artifacts now, right? First thing you want to do is volatile. What are the volatile artifacts? Come on, guys. This is definitely the award-winning question. What are the most volatile artifacts you can collect? Sorry? Absolutely fantastic. Did you attend my session in, I don't know where, Providence, Boston? No? Okay. So let's move on. Thank you. These are some of the questions you can, points you can run. You can actually go into the SQL command and create this log text. And if you run this command, dbcc log info and go, it will actually print out whatever is there in your transaction log. Also, the DMOS ring buffers tells you if there is a security error. And remember, we are talking about somebody hacking into SA password. That is actually visible using this. We can actually show this to you live too. Data cache, plan cache, recently executed statements. This is all actually going to be part of our demo. So we can take care of it a little later. Then what are the non-volatile things? Default trace files. What are default trace files? Anybody know? Come on, guys. This is a DBA question. Sorry?
There is a default trace running, but I wouldn't say it's still volatile or very like that.
It's non-volatile.
Well, for a while, I mean, it runs over.
Correct. It will runs over, right? Yes, you're right. And that's why I see this is number 2. This is not number 3. Okay? These are the files that are almost always running, 3 or 4 of them. 3 or 4, right? They're in the default trace folders in your SQL Server log folder. And you can actually take these 4 or 5 and just copy them over so that you know what is happening. What is the pre-planned artifacts collection? That's something you spoke about, running a trace, for example. That's one thing. Log readers, a second thing. Third thing would be creating a honeypot. What's a honeypot? Honeypot is a trap, actually, and you can call it sensitive HR data, the database name, and you can actually put false personal information, including salary information, and so on, and then do what? Wait for some sucker to come in and try to hack that database, right? That would do what? That will actually help you to find how he or she came into your database, through what route. And then if this becomes too persistent, then you know that, okay, this person is a regular hacker, and this is the path he follows, And this is something that what do you call it? The FBI, CIA, they use honeypots a lot. For example, your drug bust, the drugs that are being busted are through honeypots, right? They send somebody to buy drugs and then they catch you in action. That's exactly what the honeypots are for. And what is collection of configuration? You had a question or?
I was actually just saying that pre-plan, one of the pre-plan would be the configuration check.
So what's the difference between a good question and a great question? Guys haven't been attending too many presentations, I get. Yeah, so the great question is the question for which the answer is in the next line. Okay, so remember this. So configuration collection, how do you collect configuration information? So all my 17 years, yes sir, go ahead.
Well, basically, they are these tools, but those can be via DMVs and the diagnostics are all the same.
Okay, so what he's saying is run some DMVs and collect the information, right? But there's only one company that I know of so far who runs the SP configure on every single server, every single day, and puts it into a database. And if anything changes in the configuration, they know through the audit command as to what happened. So definitely configuration is something that you do not want to overlook at all. What else can you look by way of configuration? This is seriously in Forensics 101. You really want to do that. Yes?
Basically, on the configuration level, you can set on the data instance and database configuration level, you can get such much of different ways to actually hit the security. There is many
Okay.
configurations. You're pointing a certain, and then I can
But you got the idea, right? That there's so much to collect. But you can decide what you want.
76 configurations on instance side and database side. Something.
Correct. But no, let me just, not just the SP configure or whatever the SQL Server configuration is, but please try to pay attention to this one. Do you know that every single set of options that you select has predetermined amount of DLLs install footprint that it has? Do you agree? So take a hash of the default install immediately after you are done installing SQL Server. Take an inventory of what is there in each of the folders, and what is the command called? The hash that you run on every single folder, Department of Forensics Computer Labs, DFCLDD. So you can actually take a disk dump of your existing install and protect it with a hashtag, and you would know that each install has a specific signature. Now, if there was a breach, what you want to do is immediately take a snapshot of that SQL Server and compare it with what has changed from the raw install that you have. So for example, if you have a VM that you are constantly cloning, you know that when you install the VM, the C:\program files, MS SQL Server, blah, 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 they have that same amount of information. The DLLs have the same exact timestamp and so on, right? So that is something that you want to definitely make sure that you have that information with you all the time. How many of you actually do that? I found this out the hard way, that one of our patches, you might have known of this DLL, it's called ATL.dll. It's in SQL Server somewhere buried. Somehow that got changed. No malicious intent was there, but it got changed and it totally messed up our SQL Server. And it went back like 3 or 4. What happened was that somebody had, by mistake, fallen back to the earlier version of the VM, and nobody knew how that happened, what happened. It was not a very sensitive thing, but we found out that the only difference in that was the ATL.dll by just comparing the timestamp of the DLL the way it is. So just take care of that. That's something you want to collect as a method of, as a matter of daily principle. And then constant updates, right? Whatever you're doing, make sure if you have a image of a pre-existing SQL server that you already have, then if you update it using the patching cycle or Windows update or SQL updates, then you want to take that snapshot and replace it with this one so that you have something to compare it with. So here you go. As you see, the importance, top importance, because they're volatile. Transaction logs, very important, but they're not as important as the equal connections and sessions. The rest of them, just as you know, you can see them here, right? Questions on this so far? And again, this is available for download, so don't frantically try to write it down. Verification, okay? You have to look from inside what happened. And that's what this Pink Panther thing is about. So if you look at this, right, these are some of the resident SQL Server artifacts, data cache, plan cache. These are some of the most important things that you want to look into. Active VLFs, and that's something you can do by using dbcc login for too. And then what is the server state? That's again sp configure is something that you want to run on a regular basis. The ring buffers, we already saw the SQL thing for that. And CLR libraries, etc. These are something that are not changing, and these are some of the last things that you want to worry about, right? They don't belong to SQL Server. The above thing belongs to SQL Server. And we have a similar one on this side too. And as you can see, most important, data cache. And you can actually automate using this Windows Forensics toolkit that I was talking to you about. This is available for free download, but there are advanced versions of it. I don't know. I haven't had a chance to use it. I think each of those like $4,000 or $5,000, so it is not worth downloading. So I only played around with the basic version of it, but pretty darn effective. So, questions on this? Here's a question for you though. If you guys are not going to ask me questions, then I have to ask you a question. I mean, we had an application where it would just time out. There's absolutely zero issues with the SQL query that it generated. There was no problem in the network traffic or the resources available on the web server, the application server, and the database server. The next box of mint goes to the person who can remotely answer this question. And this is what I meant by making sure that you have your cache clock hands and your clock hands and the clock synchronized properly. Yes, sir? No. As I said, there's no problem with SQL. Or Windows for that matter too. So, but thanks. Yes, sir?
You meaning that could cause that?
Yeah?
I think somebody's trying to make a SQL injection.
Somebody's trying to make a SQL injection?
Only semi-clone.
Not quite. I'll tell you what. What had happened was that some clown in one of our offices had actually set back the clock to Pacific time as we were in the Boston time. So the request would go out with 3 hours prior, and when it came back, the request had a 3-hour time difference. They said, geez, this came too late, and it timed out. And we never realized till we said, geez, why is this time showing like that? And so one of the first things I have now gotten into the habit of looking is the time. Whenever you have, definitely make sure this comes as a part of your configuration too.
If you are having a SQL injection that try to get a very massive data spying massive data, you basically have to do that in order to get a big batch of data.
Correct. But again, as I said, there was no issue with SQL Server or anything at all, right? That was the first thing. So yes, I have had actually, we have been at the receiving end of a SQL injection. and somebody sent us about 4 million requests in a second, in a question of 1 hour, 4 million requests. Whereas we used to be a law firm when I used to work last, and we had no idea who would do this to us. And we actually could never find out where that attack came from. But it was a DOS, or denial of service is what it is called, right? And it shut down our entire corporate network for pretty close to about 5 minutes. Very angry people there because our lawyers used to charge like $2,500 an hour, and these kind of lawyers. So artifacts analysis. I'll just go through this. How are we doing on times? Anybody? No?
Still got 25 minutes.
Ugh. Okay. I'm just going to go through this right now. So pre-analysis, remember I told you, create an image, keep a pristine image with you so that you can have a before and after. What's a write blocker? Anybody use a write blocker here ever? If you are ever going to do anything pertaining to forensics, please use a write blocker. What does the write blocker do? It will actually prevent any accidental writing to your hard drive. That's absolutely crucial, because anybody who is monkeying around with your database or your Windows file systems can just say, oh yeah, I didn't do it, right? Because you are constantly writing to that hard drive. So if you take an image of, or a snapshot, VM snapshot of that particular machine, make sure that you have a write blocker so nothing writes to it. Okay, and then you can run whatever analysis you want to run. Write blockers, how expensive do you think these write blockers can be? $25, $30, maybe $50? Yeah, maybe $100, right? So compared to what is happening on your network, this should be a piece of cake. Audit level, if you are using Honeypot, make sure that your audit level is high so that you can actually go ahead and collect both the successful, unsuccessful logins and so on. Log history of whatever is happening. The history of the suspect, is this guy doing this on a regular basis? Is he in the database too often? SQL logs is something that you can analyze as much as you want. Are SQL logs really useful for seeing what happened? Yes, they are. And system and event viewer logs also go a long way, actually. Especially if they are using Windows authentication. It's a great way to actually narrow it down to the time frame. So he cannot say, yeah, he was not logged in, because now your VPN logs also show that he had actually logged in, or she. And profiler trace monitoring software. Everybody uses monitoring software, right? Or you don't? This is actually a great way to look into what's happening, because these monitoring tools actually help you go fairly granular into what statements are actually running against what databases, and they're slightly more detailed than our activity monitor that we have. So definitely, this is a great way to do it, and we will actually have some analysis done on the SQL Server database that I have on my machine, and we'll take it from there. Log readers, very expensive. What is the second most annoying part of log readers? I have used them, by the way, so, you know. They're great tools. In fact, they are so powerful that if you know that this change was made, you can actually right-click on that change and say, please give me a script that will undo that change too. So if somebody is hacking into your database, changing information, you can actually use log readers, but the problem is they are expensive, okay? 2, you need to know which database to protect and which tables to protect. That really needs to go, but if you know that, then they're really useful, and it has to be pre-planned. You cannot just say after the fact, which is mostly the forensics thing, that please let me go ahead and run the log reader. It won't really help you. Configuration of log readers, as I said, you know, we have to pre-plan. That means you have to set exactly what you want to collect, and once you do that, then it's easy to roll back. And again, constant updates is something you verify against. Now comes the demo. Cool. This is a pretty good machine for a 6 gigabyte RAM. So I have a database here called SQL Server Forensics Analysis. Sorry? Doesn't show? Okay. Ah, good. Gives me some time to load up the scripts for you. Okay, how would I do that now? F4.
Windows P 2 times down the key arrow and F5.
Yeah, it will come, I'm sure. So it's loading it here. Okay, one more time. Oh boy. In this new job where I work as a SQL Solutions Architect, believe it or not, I have no PC in my computer, a company. Not a single PC, they're all Mac. So getting used to, where's my mouse button? Oh, here it is. See if this works. Okay, can you? I'm doing duplicate. No, it was extended. Now I'm trying to do duplicate. So okay, if this works.
Maybe trying to reset the display properties. I had equal problem in one thing.
Okay, let's try this again. I'm going to remove this.
Yeah, but then you,
Let's try this again.
I think it's your computer is stalled somehow.
Can I show them this screen then, or?
No, it's the inside of your computer now. It's
Okay.
still on extended. You're not out of extended yet, and it won't. So maybe you have to restart it. Actually, I don't know. It looks like it's completely locked.
Ah, something happened.
Just took some time, but now you know.
So yeah, that's fine. How many dBAs it takes to change your screen, right?
That's hard.
Yeah. Now I have to look there to find out what I'm running. So this is a script, for example. What I can do is I can actually go ahead and open this guy up and tables, and this is something that I did yesterday. So I'm going to go into edit mode. I'm going to change this to 5. And we'll go back. Sorry. So this will give me a list of statements that I ran. Of course. As you can see, it's giving you almost everything, including your connection information at the bottom, who ran that script. But more importantly, see, almost, I'm going to look for. One, two. These are the statements, and one sec. This will actually give you the entire objects that we have. You need to run something like this on a regular basis. So it will tell you if somebody created any new object. What is the best way to hide your objects from regular view? Yeah?
Alter it seem to be as Microsoft Shift.
Sorry?
To alter it seem to be like it was a system built-in.
Yeah, so you can actually create them as a system object, for example, right? And then, but the way to find out is if it was MS shipped, right? So if it was shipped by Microsoft itself in the original build, then it would have a 1 against its name. Otherwise it would be 0. For example, this is something that we had a stored procedure, right? And it gives you type and everything, and this also is available for you to download. So you can keep this on a regular basis, yeah.
Isn't it an actually internal check algorithm at least has or maybe a asymmetric encryption for this data? You actually cannot fix it with even a lot of time to that it would be like MSIP function or procedure.
So can you fix it? Yes, you can. Correct. But then again, you would have something in your recent statements, active connections, that will also show up. So unless you are a super duper thief, yeah, so it will leave a trace. For example, one of the questions that somebody brought up last time was, did you get his question? What if somebody actually hacks enough to find, to make sure that that system, that object actually appears to be like Microsoft shipped object? The name would tell you if it is right, and if they are very careful, you can still actually trace it back using the recent statements, the plan handles, and so on, right? But what was the question somebody asked me? Let me come back to that if I remember again. I forgot that. And this is like almost like a sys process kind of thing. And these are the sessions that are currently active, pretty much like a activity monitor, but designed by ourselves here. And so anything that you are doing over here, this is, I think the last one, above 51, is what is more important for you. Then let me try doing this for you. Database engine, connect, SQL Server authentication, SA1, it didn't like it. 1, didn't like it. Okay, so
Sorry, excuse me, maybe it was the question that I asked about if you're, for example, collecting, in addition to this ID 0 and 0, if you get hash from them, how it should be, then if somebody actually changes it, it's easy to check the hash and the full join that if they are equal, those objects, because they should be static.
no, I didn't get that question. Sorry, one last time, otherwise we'll take it offline.
Sorry, I interrupted, but I
No.
think it may be what you're thinking, because this view you had is basically if you have the MS shift function or procedure, any object.
Correct.
And now if hacker changed that one, so for that view, if you put also a hash and actually the original version, how it should be, those all objects,
So,
and then join them, you can check from hash where it changed and then which object.
okay, so what you're saying is a pre and a post hack thing, right? Okay, so again, that comes down to the same thing that, do you get his question? That what he was suggesting is that whatever we are trying to run over here, the prior script to find out what was the, if it was a Microsoft shipped object or not, the best thing to do is to run that on a regular basis against your database server to find out if there was something changed or not. And believe it or not, a lot of sensitive software like your HR software or your finance softwares, they actually give you this audit function where they will actually tell you if something was not MS shipped. and immediately it will bring to your attention what was actually created falsely, and then you can take it down again. And so the other thing I was trying to show you now is oh yeah, the point I remember, this isn't going anywhere right now. So this is the first hack that I had, the second hack. So remember I was telling you about if somebody's trying to hack and now suddenly they have a successful login, it would show over here. Okay. So any questions on this so far? Questions, comments? Okay. I would have loved to have about another 1 hour. We could have done a little more demos. Unfortunately, we don't. You can see it now, right? Okay. So this is the book that I referred to. It is available as an ebook also, so if you ever want to look into it. This is based only on SQL 2005, however, and if you can actually go ahead and try to update your knowledge based on this for 2012 or 2014. Things have changed, but especially the plan handle and that all has not really changed at all. So that you can really trace back pretty easily using this. I actually called this gentleman. I had a chat with him and I asked him if it was okay to reproduce some of his scripts and all that, and he says, please go ahead. So when you are doing any presentation, make sure you have that person's information exactly the way I have put down here. Otherwise it is like, what is it called? Plagiarism. You have to be very careful in USA at least. You can't do this. So there's a website which actually helps you put down this citations the way they are. Even if there is a small information mistake like this comma, if it's not there, then it is considered as plagiarism. So seriously, and that's me, by the way. And there is a white paper here, this bmyers.com. I strongly suggest go ahead and look at it. A lot of what I have done here is part of that too. And of course, whatever I have been doing on the field is pretty much something that comes out of these books, but my personal experience too. Okay, awesome, cool. Now wait, we have 5 more minutes at least before. Yeah. Okay, and remember this, you love this. Anybody here a CSI fan? Wow, you guys are tough. Okay, so we have some times for questions. So if anybody have questions, interactiveness, please share with me. And if I have to include something more over here, then I would love to do that too. Yes, go ahead. The gentleman in the back.
What do you suggest starting out with if, to set up your SQL server for potential attacks in the future? What to start off with setting up?
Okay, so the question is, what do you start off with? What is the first step, right? Yeah. First step, I would say definitely make sure nobody can hack into it. In the sense, the admin, everything, the plain vanilla flavor SQL Server, like no tools, anything at all. That's number 1 step. Number 2, unless you're a DBA, don't let them access the SQL Server. I don't care who it is, even if it is Vice President of Finance. Oops, sorry, you want something? Talk to my boss. 2, make sure, this is very crucial, this at least happens in America, and that's why I must share this with you, that every single network, we are required to display a banner that says, you are accessing company resources, which gives us the right to monitor every damn thing you do in the computer, on the network, etc., etc. I have a sample of that banner. If anybody needs, I can actually upload that later. And that is basically, it's called a CYA. Anybody know what CYA is, right? Okay, I can't say that on mic here because that's on record. So you want to basically protect yourself by putting out these kind of banners on your network on a regular basis, which basically means that if anybody is doing anything that is worth suspecting, then you have the right as the owner of the network and the maintainer of the network to actually examine their computers, their thumb drives, their USB drives without putting the glue in it, and so on, okay? So that is the third step, right? Fourth step, definitely disable SA login, create a login that is just as powerful as an SA, make your passwords complex, right? And if it is a very crucial application like HR or your pricing or finance, make sure that you have the audit turned on, both for successful and unsuccessful logins, correct? And keep on backing up your configuration information to a metadata database on a very regular basis. It sounds very easy, but it is not unless you automate it and put it as a job that runs every day. And then run an audit against the two configuration options, right? Monitor your network for transfer of these signatures that I showed you in the file formats. That's very crucial. Your network monitors like sniffers, what it's called. Yeah, they are supposed to be able to monitor these files being transferred, if you know what I'm saying, right? More importantly, if something happens, number one thing, okay? If it's a VM, right away take a snapshot of the entire VM, okay? I don't care whether it has got transaction logs that can be logged forward, I mean rolled forward, rolled backwards or not, but the first thing is to take a snapshot of the VM, which means that the entire database is also now available to you as a snapshot, okay? Does that answer your question? If it is not a VM, if it's a physical machine, then what do? That is tricky, because how much of that can you back up, right? So if that is the thing and you can quiesce your server for even a split second, take a snapshot, okay? What's quiesce? Anybody? Okay, this has definitely got a mint on its name here. Where is the mints here? So anybody use VSS here much or not? The volume shadow service, right? So volume shadow service actually, sorry? Yes. Correct. No, not Visual Source Safe. Volume shadow copy service. So it actually helps you, it will actually take your database offline for a quick second, but then you can actually take the entire image of that server or that set of folders and copy it elsewhere, right? Two, all the volatile information. That is what you want to do. First thing. So what will you not do when you think there is a hack? Absolutely, correct. But even before you shut down, yeah, you can't shut down because we can't even take it offline for a quick second, right? Anything else you remember? Don't run stupid queries. Why? A, because they will flush your plan cache, they will flush your stored proc cache, and it will, whatever is there in the memory, they'll all start to get flushed out because now there is no space. Because say, for example, somebody changed some small piece of information for you, and then they run some really repetitive query, and suddenly everything is out of your memory, then you're screwed. So don't do that. Definitely do not run anything that will change any objects or security. Make sense? Okay. Any other question? There was a second hand that came up too. I don't know who was that. So does that answer all your questions? Actually, and there's a lot more to it, but these are the fundamental steps you want to do is to take a snapshot of the system as soon as possible, right? Yeah.
Does there exist any like a complete or let's say a light framework platform software solution for this on the markets?
Correct. So his question is, are there any softwares that are available for us to run this like out of the box? The WFST that I was talking to you about will, and there are to access data toolkit is also the second one. I have used both of them. WFT is something that I like because it is reasonably cheap compared to access data. And then after all this is done, you also need to be able to report and so on. So there is another section to it which would be great if I can hold these two back to back, is the digital forensics part, which is the part 1, and database forensics is part 2 actually. And digital forensics actually lays a legal framework for you as to what you can run, what you cannot do, and so on, at least in America. I don't know everywhere else in the globe. So can I give this to you, sir? Good. So any more questions? Do we have, how are we doing on time? 9:55, 57?
1 minute.
1 minute, okay. So just one quick thing. If you do have a problem like this in the digital world, what we are required to do in America, for example, is make sure that you have a warrant to look into somebody's personal property. So if you feel the hack happened over here, come on in. If the hack happened on this server, in this guy's laptop, if you don't have that banner that says you are accessing corporate resources and you are liable to prosecution or whatever, then you cannot successfully pursue any further investigation till you have a warrant. Okay, makes sense? So thank you everyone for your attention. And there are session evaluation forms here. And everybody who gives me full marks gets some more pens here. And definitely. So please come and pick up this stuff from here, guys.